Welcome, curious minds, to another deep dive. Today, we're plunging into a topic that, well, it feels like science fiction, but is rapidly becoming reality, the world of senolytic therapies and anti-aging research.
hmm
We've gathered a really fascinating stack of sources outlining, the global advancements in this cutting-edge field. Our mission, to extract the most important insights, give you those aha moments, and help you quickly grasp what's happening right at the forefront of extending health span. I mean, imagine therapies not just treating diseases, but actively slowing biological aging itself. That's precisely what we're exploring today.
It really is fascinating. And what's striking is just how quickly these therapies are moving, from preclinical studies into actual human trials. So we'll be looking at the underlying science, the big trials happening worldwide, the geographic hotspots where this research is really taking off, and what the future might hold. We're trying to explore not just what's happening, but, why it matters for all of us.
Okay, great. Let's unpack the core concept then. Senescent cells and senolytics. They get called zombie cells or aging cells a lot. Can you simplify for us what they are and why they're such a critical target?
Absolutely. So senescent cells are essentially cells that have stopped dividing. They've entered this kind of arrested state,
Okay.
but they refuse to die off like they should. Instead of getting cleared out, they accumulate in our tissues as we age.
And that's the problem, them just sticking around.
Exactly. They become quite problematic because they start secreting this cocktail of harmful inflammatory molecules, sometimes called the SASP.
That's ASP, okay.
Yeah, senescence-associated secretory phenotype. Basically, it contributes to tissue damage, chronic inflammation, dysfunction.
Yeah.
Think of them as bad actors corrupting their environment. They really drive many age-related diseases, from heart conditions to neurodegeneration.
Ah, okay, so they're actively causing trouble.
Precisely. And the fundamental idea behind senolytics is, well, simple in concept. Selectively identify and clear out these specific problematic cells. The goal isn't just treating symptoms of age-related conditions, but improving overall health, and crucially, directly slowing biological aging itself.
That makes so much sense, right? Get rid of the core problem, the bad actors,
Right.
and the whole system hopefully improves. Now that we understand the why, let's really unpack where this action is happening globally. The United States, for example, seems to be a real hotbed.
It certainly is. Yeah, the sheer volume and the diversity of trials in the U.S. is striking. For instance, you've got St. Jude Children's Research Hospital in Memphis. They're running a phase 2 trial combining dasatinib and quercetin.
D plus Q.
Exactly, D plus Q, or sometimes another compound called ficitin. And what's particularly impactful there is their focus. Middle-aged childhood cancer survivors, average age around 40.
Wow, that's specific. Why them?
Well, they often experience accelerated aging. So the trial aims to reduce frailty and improve blood biomarkers over 6 months. And they have a really long-term follow-up plan, too, checking in every 5 years.
That long-term view is critical for aging research. Are these drugs showing promise elsewhere too?
Oh, definitely. You have researchers like Kirkland at Cedars-Sinai.
Hmm.
His group is involved in something like 90 active senolytic trials worldwide.
90. Wow.
Yeah, it's a huge effort. And one really compelling pilot study they did showed that just 6 weeks of D plus Q significantly improved cognition and walking speed in seniors.
In just 6 weeks.
Yeah.
Mild cognitive impairment, you said.
That's right, mild cognitive impairment. It's a rapid and, well, quite noticeable change.
That's impressive. Improved cognition and mobility. What about other cognitive conditions like Alzheimer's?
There's work there, too. Hebrew Senior Life's Stamina trial, that was a phase 3 study. They used D plus Q, but intermittently in older adults who are at risk for Alzheimer's.
What'd they find?
Meaningful results. They saw about a 2-point rise in MoCA scores. That's a cognitive assessment test.
Right, I know Mocha.
And also reduced levels of TNF-alpha, which is a key inflammatory marker, all within just 12 weeks.
12 weeks. Okay, so cognition seems like a promising area. Anywhere else D plus Q is being tested?
Yeah, beyond cognition, places like the Mayo Clinic and Harvard are running early-stage trials, phase 3 again. They're looking at D plus Q for conditions like idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis, or IPF, and also bone health, like osteoporosis.
How's that going?
Well, so far, the bone density effects they've seen in postmenopausal women have been, let's say, modest. Still early days, though.
Okay, so if we pull back, the big picture from the U.S. is just the sheer variety of these trials, isn't it? Targeting everything from frailty in specific groups like cancer survivors, to cognitive decline, to specific organ diseases like IPF or bone issues.
Exactly. It really underscores the broad potential senolytics are showing across well, a whole range of age-related conditions.
Right. Now, let's shift focus. Let's go across the Atlantic and maybe beyond Europe, the UK, Australia. What's happening there? Collaboration seems key.
Collaboration is absolutely vital in a field moving this fast. And yeah, there's exciting stuff happening. In Vienna, for example, the Ludwig Boltzmann Institute, they recently announced plans to test senolytics not just for advanced diseases,
Why?
but also, and this is fascinating, to try and rejuvenate older donor organs before transplantation.
Wait, really? Rejuvenate organs before transplant?
That's the idea. Imagine what that could mean. It could potentially increase the availability of viable organs, which, as you know, is a huge bottleneck in medicine.
Wow, yeah, that feels like a massive leap if it works. What else is coming out of that region?
Well, we're also seeing these big international teams like from UCL, Stanford, INSERM in France, Helsinki. They discovered something really interesting, that accelerated aging in specific organs can actually act as systemic indicators, like warning signs for broader disease risks.
So treating one aged organ might help the whole body.
Potentially, yes. It supports the idea of more targeted senolytic strategies. Maybe you don't need to treat the whole system everywhere. And another really important point, even the regulatory bodies like the EMA in Europe and the FDA in the US, they're actively developing frameworks now to support these anti-aging therapies.
That's huge, right? It signals they're taking this seriously. Legitimacy.
Absolutely. It shows there's serious intent behind their development, moving beyond just, fringe science.
Okay, critical point. Now let's swing over to Asia Pacific and Japan. The sources suggest this is where things get really interesting for the future, especially around innovation and market growth.
Yeah, absolutely. Asia Pacific is definitely a region to watch closely. In Japan, for example, at Juntendo University, there's a team led by Toru Minamino. They're advancing what they're calling an aging vaccine.
An aging vaccine. How does that work?
It's based on targeting a specific protein, GPNMB, that's found on senescent cells. The idea is to train the immune system to selectively remove those cells, sort of analogous to how mRNA vaccines train our immune system against viruses, but aimed at zombie cells instead.
That sounds incredible, like reprogramming the immune system to fight aging. Is it working?
The preclinical data in mice has been very promising, yeah. Showing good clearance of senescent cells. Of course, translating that to humans is the next big step.
Definitely. What are the main hurdles there, translating something so novel?
Well, usual suspects. Demonstrating long-term safety is paramount. Then figuring out optimal dosing, proving consistent effectiveness in humans without, off-target effects hitting healthy cells. And because it's such a novel mechanism, the regulatory pathways might need some unique considerations too. It's not a standard drug.
Makes sense. Are there other fundamental breakthroughs happening in that region? Maybe more on the cellular level?
Yes, absolutely. There have been some significant in vitro breakthroughs. So in lab dishes, not yet in animals or people. Labs like RWTH Aachen in Germany, okay, not Asia Pacific, but Connected Research, they found 4 specific senolytic compounds.
Which ones?
JQ1, RG7112, Nutlin3A, and AMG232. They found these actually reduce the epigenetic age of human blood cells.
So literally turning back the clock on those cells.
Effectively, yes, according to epigenetic markers. And then researchers at Osaka University in Japan discovered a protein, AP2A1. It seems to act like a master switch regulating senescence, cell aging. And suppressing this protein actually reversed senescence in aged cells in their experiments.
Wow, reversing it. Those are fundamental discoveries.
They really are. Understanding the core mechanisms like that is key.
So with all this groundbreaking innovation and promising science, it's probably no surprise that commercial interest is booming, right?
Right.
What's the market looking like?
Exactly. The market side reflects the scientific excitement. The Asia-Pacific senolytic market, just as one example, hit around $838 million in 2024.
$838 million already.
Yeah. And it's projected to grow at something like an 8.6% compound annual growth rate through 2030. That kind of growth isn't just numbers, it's a really powerful signal. It means major investment is flowing in, suggesting real confidence that these therapies can move from labs to, actual accessible treatments.
Right, money talks. Any specific country standing out?
Well, the report mentions Thailand specifically as a smaller but rapidly growing segment, around $22.5 million in 2024, but growing even faster at about 9.2% CAGR. It just shows the growth isn't limited to the biggest players, it's becoming more widespread. It paints a picture of a future where these treatments could become much more globally available.
That market growth is definitely huge, a clear sign of serious commercial interest.
Okay.
Okay, so What does all this actually mean for the future of treatment? It's obviously not just about D plus Q anymore. What are the new exciting approaches emerging that could really redefine senolytic therapies?
You're absolutely right. The field is diversifying incredibly quickly beyond those initial compounds like D plus Q or Fisetin. We're seeing some really exciting emerging modalities. For instance, there's a peptide called FAXO4-DRI. Just recently, February 2025, it demonstrated its ability to specifically clear senescent cells in animal models, showing benefits for kidney issues and frailty.
A peptide. Okay.
What else? Then there are things called PROTACs. It's proteolysis targeting chimeras. It's an innovative approach. Think of them as molecular guides. They're designed to grab onto specific problematic proteins within senescent cells, like BCL-XL or BRD4, and tag them for destruction by the cell's own waste disposal system.
So they trigger the cell's own cleanup crew to take out key survival proteins.
Exactly, inducing cell death that way. And looking even further ahead, you have technologies like EVs, extracellular vesicles.
Tiny bubble cells release.
Yeah, basically using those as delivery vehicles. And mRNA therapies, using small bits of RNA to regulate genes. Plus, AI-driven screening to find new targets and drugs faster, all aimed at enhancing precision and, crucially, reducing potential toxicity.
Okay, so how do these fundamentally differ from, say, D plus Q?
Yeah,
Is it mostly about being more targeted, less scattershot?
that's a big part of it, yeah. Aiming for much higher specificity is key for the next generation. We're even seeing concepts borrowed from cancer therapy, like CAR-RT-style immune cells.
CAR-T for aging, like we use for cancer.
The same principle, potentially. Engineering a patient's own immune cells to specifically seek out and destroy senescent cells. It's still early days, but the concept is there.
Wow.
Then there's nanoparticle delivery, tissue-specific targeting to make sure therapies go only where needed. We're also seeing different kinds of approaches emerge, like xenomorphics.
Xenomorphics, what's that?
They don't necessarily kill the senescent cells, but they try to change their behavior specifically to stop them from secreting those harmful SASP molecules we talked about.
Ah, so neutralizing them instead of eliminating them.
Exactly. Or direct SASP inhibitors to block the inflammatory signals. And alongside all this, a huge focus on developing better biomarkers to actually track senescence levels in the body and monitor treatment effectiveness.
Okay, so it sounds like a whole toolkit is developing killing cells, reprogramming them, blocking their signals, targeted delivery. How will these different approaches work together? Is that the idea?
That's a critical question, and likely yes. The future probably lies in combination therapies tailored to the individual. This ecosystem of different approaches suggests a future of highly personalized, hopefully much more effective anti-aging strategies.
A whole ecosystem. Right. Okay, let's look at the horizon then. Based on these sources, what can we realistically expect? Near-term, mid-term, long-term for senolytic therapies.
Okay, let's break down the timeline based on what the research suggests. In the near term, say the next 1 to 3 years, we'll likely see mostly smaller clinical trials continuing. They'll probably focus on specific conditions where senescence is clearly implicated, like frailty, maybe cognition, fibrosis in organs like the lungs or liver.
And using what kind of therapies? Still D plus Q.
Primarily, yes. The key mechanisms tested will likely still be combinations like D plus Q, Fisetin, maybe some of those early vaccine modalities starting human trials. And importantly, this is when regulatory bodies, the FDA, EMA, will really be working hard to define clearer frameworks for approving these kinds of anti-aging therapies.
Setting the rules of the game.
Exactly. And market-wise, the US, EU, and Japan will probably lead the initial growth phase.
Okay, that's the next few years. What about the midterm? Say 3 to 7 years out.
Moving to the midterm, that's when we can probably anticipate larger, more definitive phase 3 trials. These would likely target more widespread conditions. Think non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, NAFLD, idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis, IPF, which we mentioned, maybe Alzheimer's disease.
And would we see newer therapies by then?
Yes, that's the expectation. Newer modalities like those PROTACs, peptides, perhaps even early versions of CAR-T senolytics could emerge more prominently in clinical testing. Another key development will likely be biomarker-backed approvals, meaning using tools like sophisticated epigenetic clocks to measure biological age changes or advanced imaging techniques to actually demonstrate the drugs are working on a biological level, not just symptoms. Those could become part of the approval process.
Okay, and geographically?
Geographically, the sources project the Asia-Pacific region, particularly China, India, South Korea, might really take a leadership role in terms of market growth during this period.
Interesting shift. Okay, so what about the long haul? The long term, beyond 7 years?
Well, the long-term vision, if things pan out, is pretty transformative. We could
Yeah.
genuinely envision widespread geroprotective use.
Meaning using these preventively in generally healthy older adults.
Precisely. To slow aging and prevent disease onset, personalized combinations could become standard, potentially even integrating senolytics with other advanced approaches like epigenetic reprogramming, using things like Yamanaka factors to actually reset cellular age.
Wow, combining senolytics with reprogramming.
It's a powerful idea being explored, and the ultimate societal shift could see aging itself finally recognized, maybe even by regulators, as a treatable condition. That would lead towards potentially global ubiquity in preventive aging care, a real paradigm shift.
That is mind-blowing stuff that sounds incredibly promising, almost too good to be true sometimes. But let's ground ourselves. What about the road bumps? What are the key challenges, the feasibility issues? What still needs to be figured out to get us from here to that long-term vision?
Yeah, you're right to ask about the challenges. No scientific frontier is without them, and this one has plenty. On the feasibility side, the preclinical success in rodent models is genuinely very strong. We see clear functional improvements, mobility, cognition, organ health markers. That's encouraging.
But mice aren't humans.
Exactly. When it comes to human safety, those early D plus Q trials have shown pretty good tolerability, which is positive. But we have to remember some of these first-generation agents, like dasatinib, were originally developed as chemotherapy drugs. So risks do persist.
Right, potential side effects.
Yes. That's why those next-generation systems we talked about, aiming for much higher specificity, are so crucial to target only senescent cells and leave healthy cells alone, mitigating those risks.
Okay, safety is paramount. What else?
Another significant challenge lies with biomarkers. We mentioned them earlier. While tools like epigenetic clocks are being used effectively in the lab, like in that JQ1 study,
Right, the in vitro study.
their clinical translation is tricky. We really need reliable, validated in vivo measures, ways to track senescent cell burden and clearance accurately, non-invasively, in living people over time. That's still a major hurdle for effective monitoring and trial endpoints.
We need better ways to see if it's actually working inside the body.
Precisely. And finally, there's the whole area of combination protocols. The theoretical synergy of combining senolytics with, say, epigenetic reprogramming using Yamanaka factors. It's a very active area of discussion in research circles.
But still mostly theory.
Still largely theoretical or in very, very early experimental stages for human application. How best to combine them, the timing, the safety lots to figure out there.
Got it. So, strong preclinical data, but human safety, reliable biomarkers, and complex combination strategies are the big things to solve.
That sums it up pretty well. Significant hurdles remain.
Wow, what a deep dive indeed. We've really covered a lot of ground. From understanding what a senolytic actually is, these zombie cell clearers, to seeing this global race to develop treatments, the different approaches, the hotspots, and realizing how close we might be to therapies that could fundamentally change how we approach aging itself. It's truly, mind-blowing to consider the possibilities.
It really is. And if we try to connect this all back to the bigger picture, it's clear the field is rapidly advancing. It's moving towards these precision-driven therapies designed not just to treat specific diseases after they happen, but to target the underlying biological aging process itself, proactively. And this inevitably leaves us with a really important, perhaps even profound question to think about. What might a world actually look like where aging is considered a treatable or at least manageable condition? How would that reshape our individual lives, our healthcare systems, and maybe society as a whole?
A huge question. Definitely something for you, our listeners, to mull over as you go about your day. Thanks so much for joining us on this deep dive.